What's up? Come on, come on, spontaneous views. I'm back with another one. I'm gonna touch on something that okay, I'm gonna be talking about music. The not too much really the origin of the music. Not too I'm basically trying to what I'm basically trying to get at is that I've been hearing a lot of chatter about like the verses about, 50 Cent, Lil Wayne, that they do a verses, but I'm gonna talk about that later on. What I really want to touch on is like the like who's running rap music right now, and like how it compares to like East Coast and down south. And I guess I can incorporate a little bit of the West. But let me just say this. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been seeing a lot of interviews. Well, I don't want to say a lot, but a few interviews about, like, shout out to Big Gip. I don't know if a lot of people may not know, a lot of young cats may not know, Big Gip was an artist from Goody Mob. And he's doing a couple interviews talking about, I think he did one talking about, like, Jay-Z shouldn't have been number one on the Billboard and so forth and so on. So let me just start this off like this. Okay, let's just keep it real. Like, as far as the origin of hip hop, like the origin of hip hop, from our knowledge that we've had, came from or started in the East Coast. If I'm not mistaken, you had Melly Mel with The Message. That was one of them. Then you had the Sugar Hill Gang. They had a song also. I forgot the name of the song. It's at the tip of my tongue, and I just forgot just that fast. But it was a long song. Basically, this was back in like the mid 70s, like I would say mid to late 70s, this came out, right? So the conversation that he had was that who's running hip hop. Now I'm gonna keep it real. Now, let me just give you a quick backdrop of me. I feel like I could talk about this subject matter because I had the best of both worlds. I grew up born and raised in the North, in New Jersey. I moved to South Carolina when I was, I think, 6th, 7th grade, and I got introduced to other artists that was in the South, like the UGKs and the 8-Ball MJGs, and you can even go all the way south to like 2 Live Crew. A lot of y'all young cats may not know who 2 Live Crew is. You got Uncle Luke, you had JT Money, and that's when, like, after that, you had like the Trick Daddies and the Trinas. But the point I'm trying to make is, I'm not going to sit up here in front and say that the South is not running music, but I just want to break it down a little bit to just give you an insight of how this transition happened. So let's just start from the East. Okay, let's just, for the sake of the argument, let's just say hip hop started in up north. Let's just say it started with the 2 artists I was talking about. The Melly Mels, the Sugar Hill Gang, so forth and so on. As rap evolved, you had the Coogee rap. I don't know if a lot of people young cats may not know who these artists are. The Rakims. Then you had the Big Daddy Kanes, and you had, Run DMC. You had all these other artists that was prominent at that time. And at that time, you really didn't have a lot of South artists making music. Now, I'm not saying that they weren't or wasn't making music. They probably wasn't as prominent or in a spotlight like a Run DMC or any of these other, or like a Biz Markie or any of these other artists that was out in the East Coast. So as time go on, of course, you had the let's just say Mobb Deep. Now I'm naming artists that I grew up on, like other than the Coogee rap, Big Daddy Kane, Biz Markie. Like, you had a slew of East Coast artists that came out, and they were prominent at that time. The Run DMCs, you had all this. Then it evolved to like the Wu-Tang Clan. Then it evolved to like, I can even, before the Wu-Tang, I can even go back and say the X Clan. A lot of people may not even know who X Clan was. I'm an old head, so I can recite these artists that I grew up on. So Big Gip was basically making a comparison, I should say, which it really shouldn't be a comparison, but let's just say for the sake of the argument or the sake of the conversation, his argument was that the South is running hip hop. I can agree to that, but there is a but to what I'm about to say. when I look at all the artists that came out of the East, and I have to put 50 Cent, and the reason why I'm putting him in this subject matter, because honestly, I'm not going to say 50 Cent was the culprit of East Coast rappers not working with each other, but he was. 50 Cent, when he came out back in the early 2000s, 50 Cent was the artist that was beefing with a lot of people. And I can almost see why, because he made a song called How to Rob. That song, he talked about other artists that rubbed other artists the wrong way. So after that record came out, 50 Cent got shot. Now, I'm not trying to make it about 50 Cent. I'm just trying to give you an insight of how the division of East Coast started. So if you got a prominent figure like a 50 Cent, he's not going to really work on records with a Jay-Z. Jay-Z had Rockefeller Records. You had State Property. So if you got artists beefing with State Property, then you got The Lox. I'm not saying that they didn't do songs together, but they could have did way more. Like Mobb Deep, for example. When they was out, they was beefing with Jay-Z. Jay-Z was beefing with Mobb Deep. State Property was beefing with The Lox. You know, you had all these beefs that was going on. I can even go to the Midwest talking about Common and Ice Cube had a little beef. So when you look at this, now look at all those beefs that the East had. You never had a Wu-Tang member, and they got 9 members on their roster. RZA, GZA, Old Dirty Bastard, Inspector Deck, U-God, Ghostface Killah, Capadonna. You got all these artists now. None of them did any songs with G-Unit. Think about it. None of those artists did songs with Dipset. None of those artists did nothing with like a Nas. Nas and Jay-Z beefed. Eventually, they came to a truce and they did a few songs together. He signed to Def Jam, so forth and so on. That's another thing I want to bring up too. You got to understand record labels back then. The big time record labels back then were like the Def Jams. You had the Tommy Boys. You had Capone and Noriega. You know, you had all these artists that was on these prominent record labels like Loud Records. Loud did a tribute a couple years ago to, I think it was one of these awards. It'd be so many. It will probably have to be the BET Awards. So let's just fast forward now to the conversation about who's running hip hop. Now, I named all those artists from the East Coast, and of course, I'm missing a whole lot. But for the sake of the argument, let's just take it to the South now. So now when you start the South, when I first moved to South, I started listening to like the UGKs. This was like in the early 90s, right? You had the UGKs, you had, with Pimp C, you had Scarface, you had the Ghetto Boys, you had 8-Ball MJG. Those are like the dominant figures, and then you could trickle along to like the 3-6 Mafia. The point I'm trying to make for this conversation is, first, the South never had any type of beefs that I can recall. Like, you had the T.I. and Ludacris beef, right? But that subsided, they came to a truce or whatever the case. I'm not saying that the South didn't have any beef, but they came together. That's one thing I realized. So when you say who's running the South, who's running hip hop, yes, I would have to agree that they are. But the reason why I'm saying a but is, for one, they never had any beefs. What beefs did any type of big time beefs that artists had to where they was really pulling out guns and people getting shot and killed? Like, go back to the 50 Cent and Ja Rule. Like, if you really think about it, if 50 Cent did songs with Ja Rule, who knows where they'll be at? And even within G-Unit, you had Game. They was signed. He was with G-Unit, quote unquote, with him, but he wanted to be his own man, which, of course, then you had Young Buck, Tony Yayo, Banks, and 50 Cent with Game. Game started dissing G-Unit. Who knows where that relationship would have been if 50 Cent and Game had countless hit records. They started beefing. Now let's look at the South. Who do you know other than Ludacris and T.I. that really had a beef like that to where people wasn't even working together? So let's look at the landscape or the demographics of music when it comes to the South. You got South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi. The point I'm trying to make is that you have all these other states. So let's just say, for example, just to name a few from each state. If I go to Tennessee, you got 8Ball and MJG. You got 3 6 Mafia. Young Buck came from there. Let's go to New Orleans. You had the Hot Boys. You had Master P. Bout It. Man, when that came out, dude, I was from the North, and I was like, yo, this Master P is hitting. I'm like, Master P, this shit is hard. And I'm from the North. I'm listening to MJG, 8Ball MJG, Space Age music. Man, when I first heard that shit, I was like, oh shit. So the point I'm trying to make is, so let's say I named New Orleans. Okay, let's go to Georgia. Of course, I'm in Georgia. You got a slew of artists from Georgia. Gucci Mane, Young Jeezy. They had a beef, but they did a song together. That beef stemmed from something else, something streetwise. Let's go to North Carolina. I can't really name. You had P.D. Pablo, but he came like in the late 2000s though. You had in Florida, of course, you had Uncle Luke, 2 Live Crew, JT Money, Trick Daddy. Now you got Rick Ross. You got all these other artists. Georgia got Ludacris, even though Ludacris is not really from Georgia, but he still represented the A. You got T.I., Ludacris, I'm saying Ghetto Boys. Goody Mob, I meant to say. You got Outkast. Outkast was the biggest thing that came out. So of course, when you look at the South region, of course it's going to be bigger than the North, because the North only consisted of really 2 or 3 states. When you come as far as, like, say, when I was traveling to up north on 95, when you go to Virginia can kind of take the place of East and West. I mean, not East and the North. I mean, I'm saying the East Coast and the South, excuse me. The point I'm trying to make is that you only had a certain region as far as East Coast music to abide by. Like, you had, if you had other, of course you got Philly. Now you got a whole slew of artists from Philly. But if you take Philly, New York, and New Jersey, those are really only the main 3 states when it comes to East Coast music. Versus the South, where they got North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, New Orleans. You got all these other states, Alabama. You got all these other states that they have that's considered South music. So of course they're going to be in a position to dominate. And that's my spill on it. Now, do I agree with Big Gip on certain points? No. And yeah, like, I could kind of hear his point when he say, as far as, like, let's say Jay-Z, for example. He's saying Jay-Z really shouldn't be a part of the Billboard, be on Billboard #1. Okay. Well, who do you put in that field? Like, at the end of the day, this whole list, and I didn't even look at the whole list, but let's be honest, this list is really a perception list. Like, you can flip Jay-Z, Nas, Rakim. Like, if you're not going to incorporate the beginning people on this particular list, then I'm not really subscribing to it too. Now, when it comes to the point of who's running music, I agree with what he's saying. But on the flip side, you have more of a regional base of people that can come out with music that can relate to the region. Like, everybody don't like the boom bap music, like hardcore hip hop. Like, right now, I'm big on Griselda, Benny the Butcher, Conway the Machine, and West Side Gun. Then they got their own little crew. You can't really, and they're upstate New York. So at the end of the day, it's still, look at all the states that the East has to compare to when it comes to the South. So when you say, yeah, the South is running music, yeah, and let's keep it real too. You know how I'm gonna keep it real. When it comes to certain type of beats and music and feel good music, you have to understand us as a people that grew up, that's in this society, we like to have feel good music. So when we go out to the club, we want to hear music that's going to make us dance. We want to hear feel good music. Music that's going to make us get crunk. You know, that whole Lil Jon era. I forgot about him. Lil Jon, the crunk era. You had the snap era with Trillville, with Jermaine Dupri. Had Trillville. They had the little snap. They had what you call it? They had the little, I'm trying to think of the word, but anyway, they had a little situation where everybody was wearing white tees. Nelly had even though he's not from the North or the South, but Nelly was consisted of a Midwest rapper, but he had the Air Force Ones. The point I'm trying to make is the South, I agree, they do make music for the clubs. They make music for you to want to feel good. Like, say you having a house party, you're not going to put on Mobb Deep. You ain't going to put on Wu-Tang. Of course, you're going to put on something that's going to make you feel good, like a Gucci Mane. You're going to put on, Ludacris, T.I. You're going to put on all these music. You're going to put on a 2 Live Crew, Uncle Luke, Trick Daddy, Trina, Rick Ross, Lil Wayne, Hot Boys, Master P. Like, I could keep going, 8 Ball MJG. Just look at all of the artists that they had here in the South. So, of course, when you say they've dominated, yes, I agree. They do dominate, but it's based off the music that's being made. It's based off the music that's friendly to the radio. I've been in the South for over 20 plus years, 30 years. I've been in Atlanta for over 20 years. I've been in the South for well over 30 years. And when I can compare the music that they play on the radio, they don't play nothing from the East Coast down here at all. But when I go to New Jersey, when I go back home, I'm hearing Lil Wayne. I'm hearing T.I. I'm hearing all these other artists from the South being played. But that's not it doesn't reciprocate when it comes to the South. So I'm not going to make it an excuse about why. I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of East Coast artists don't make the music for the clubs. That's why now, in this present, in the last, let's just say 3 to 5 years, you had this drill rap come up. This drill rap really came from Chicago, but now you got New York artists taking that style, and now they're being played on the radio. They got certain beats that you can hear that is really a drill beat, and they're just rapping to it. They know that it's radio friendly. They're going to get spins on the radio. Back when Mobb Deep came out and Wu-Tang came out, they probably wasn't caring about no radio play. But when you look at the South, I agree. They appealed to the radio more than East Coast did. So I agree. Yes, the South is running hip hop. I agree with that. But you have more artists, you have more of a regional base. When you talk about the demographics of a region of music, the South got way more of a region of music to talk about versus the East, when you only got a few states to deal with or to hear from. Now, I'm not saying you don't have artists from Connecticut, Rhode Island, Boston. Like Benzino had a rap group. I think their name was Untouchables or something like that a long time ago. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can even look at the Midwest. Even though you had like the St. Louis movement with Nelly, you had all those people up there in that region, but you can still kind of say that they had more radio play than East Coast music. So the point I'm trying to make is the South they are running hip hop. I agree with that. But I'm just giving my stance that I'm looking at it. I have the beauty of being from the North and living in the South and seeing where the divide took place and basically stating my point on what happened along those lines. No, at the end of the day, we have to agree that radio started appealing to South music more than the East. And I understand it because it's feel-good music. You want to party. You want to have fun. We're in a society where it's a lot going on in society. So we already getting beat down with everything else that's going on in society. People dealing with finances, people dealing with all kinds of stuff, especially when the pandemic hit. So when people was making music, you want to make feel good music. You don't want to hear boom bap music. KRS-One, boom bap. You don't want to hear that. And I get it. But I know when I'm driving in my car, I'm the only South artist I really deal with, honestly, is 2 Chainz. And really, that's it. I'm not knocking nobody. Now, I got the old Outkast CDs. But I'm talking about as far as present day South artists, 2 Chainz is like the only one that I can relate to. But that's just me. But all I'm saying is I agree with Big Gip when he said that. The South is running music, but I'm giving you a reason why the South is running music. I can understand the comparison because the only thing you could compare from is East Coast. You could go to the West Coast too. Of course, you had the Snoop era, the Drake. I'm talking about Dr. Dre. You had these eras that came up, and they was doing their thing for a moment. East Coast or the South wasn't dropping no music when Snoop Dogg dropped. Ain't nobody was playing nothing. No South, no East, nobody was dropping nothing because they knew when Snoop, Dr. Dre, dude, that was it. Even before that, NWA, when they hit, they was cooking. So I hate to even make it an East Coast and South, but the only reason why we're having this argument is because of where hip hop started. So now you want to have certain people like, I'm just going to say this. Busta Rhymes is from Long Island, New York. He said in the interview, I forgot what he was even doing. He made a statement about hip hop starting in the Caribbean. And again, that's his preference. That's where he grew up at. Who knows what he was listening to when he was a little 7-8-year-old kid? Who knows? But the point I'm trying to make is over my lifetime, from what I know, hip hop started in the East. Now, who's running it right now? I agree, it's the South. But you got to understand, the South makes more radio-friendly music than the East Coast. And that's it. I'm not knocking it. I got the best of both worlds. I grew up, born and raised in the North, moved to the South, and ain't nothing really changed. I'm still the same person. I'm still bumping East Coast music in my car. And I've been down here for years and years. So it's nothing going to change. So do I agree with Big Gip? I agree with it. Now, real quick, let me touch before I close out. The 50 Cent and Lil Wayne talk about a verses. And of course, people saying Lil Wayne will wash 50 Cent. Again, that's a preference. People are saying, oh, well, Lil Wayne got all these mixtapes. Again, Lil Wayne is more of a prominent figure when it comes to commercial success. Now, I'm not saying 50 Cent don't got 20 songs that can go with Lil Wayne. Yes, he does. I don't understand what people are forgetting. Like, y'all forgot. And 50 Cent has mixtapes also. Now, when you talk about a versus, will some of 50 songs make the crowd go crazy other than his first album, Get Rich or Die Trying? But when you look at Lil Wayne got a whole bunch of little mixtapes and Carters and all the type of stuff. He can go back and pick 20 songs in. And I guarantee you, if they was to do a versus, he'll pick all upbeat and all songs that was radio friendly and that everybody can relate to. 50 Cent ain't gonna pull out like, I got a CD, Guess Who's Back. That's after he had got shot, and play them songs that he on the verses. He not gonna really be able to pull from that because those songs are really, there was a gangster. And that's another reason why I feel like you really can't have a versus with Lil Wayne and 50 Cent. 50 Cent came out on some old street gangster type stuff. Let's keep it real. Lil Wayne wasn't talking about that. Lil Wayne was a little kid that was rapping hard, and he was doing his thing as far as the mixtapes. But to compare them in the verses, to me, it's just going to be a preference about it. It's just going to be a preference. So I'm just going to, end it on that. Like, that's my take on it. I appreciate all music. Like I said, I used to rap myself. So I took from both sides. I took from the East and I took from the South when it comes to making music. You have to listen to all genres of music, and I'm not just saying rap. You got to pull from everything, especially when you're composing music, writing music. You can't just stick to one. You can't have tunnel vision. That's the point I'm trying to make. You can't have tunnel vision. So I say all that to say, look, if they have a versus, so be it. I mean, it's all good. But as far as what Big Gip is saying, I totally agree with what he's saying. The South is running music, but it's reasons why they're running music, and I just stated that. So once again, I'm gonna close out. Come one, come all, spontaneous views, and y'all already know. Come join me.